Hey guys, real quick, before we get into it, do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. That way, you don't miss out on any of the tea. Thanks.
Hi, Charles.
Hi, Tasha. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. We are back.
We
I
are
am excited. I'm sure lots of our Pelican briefers have questions. We had to take a hiatus.
A little break.
It's okay.
Little
but you know
summer
what?
break.
We're back. And I'm excited.
I am too. We're back at a great time. What is going on in the city of New Orleans?
Wow, there's a lot going on, right? But we are less than 10 days away from our next mayor election, which is actually next week, right? So next Saturday, now that I say it out loud.
Well, when this episode drops, we'll be less than 10 days away.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
So how about you give, actually, no, let's bring people up to date, like where we've been, right?
Yeah.
You go first.
We've done a little bit of traveling.
Yep.
We've been spending some time enjoying the city in the summer as well, and also spending some time working together to kind of decide how to bring Pelican Briefs to you guys more frequently and maybe in a slightly different format. So we are now here, Pelican Briefs in the streets, filming remotely from a very cool space, Common House downtown, which is a social hall, members club, co-work space. But we plan to kind of hit different spots in the city and continue to have the conversations that you guys come to us to hear, which is all about Louisiana and New Orleans and what's going on in politics, business development, culture, all of the things. So we're very excited to slightly shorter episodes, but still the content that you love and definitely on a more frequent basis.
Yeah, so it'll be a lot of trial and error. We're kind of figuring that out as we go, but we're excited that y'all are joining us. And for those who are from New Orleans or Louisiana, Common House was the former Louisiana Children's Museum. It's a beautiful space. They've converted it. I couldn't even tell you where we are right now. Right? We're in the old grocery store.
Are we in the old Schweigman's
studio? Right. But yeah, we're back. So I traveled this summer as well. I was in New York for a lot of this summer and came back down, and I actually just moved.
Very exciting.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I moved from Central City to the Treme neighborhood. And it's a whole new experience to be on like the downtown side of the city, because I've always been like uptown or mid-city. So I'm excited for that, right? So I'll that maybe kind of will work its way into some future episodes, right? But for now, let's talk about this election.
Yes.
So how about you give just a context of like where we are right now, less than 10 days out.
So
who's running, what's the polls saying, all that stuff.
We're less than 10 days out. We've still got quite a few people in the race, but I think it's fair to say that this really comes down to a top three as far as candidates to watch. There is the overwhelming leader, Helena Moreno, who is a longtime city council person, formerly was a news anchor here in the city. I would say very well known, huge name recognition. And currently, I think at last look was at 49% in the polls. The next two candidates are kind of flip-flopping each week that you look at the polls. Who's number two and who's number three, they sort of keep interchanging. And that's Royce Duplessis, who is currently a representative in our state legislature. And then Oliver Thomas, who was a longtime council person as well, currently not holding a seat, but is someone who has been in politics in New Orleans for decades. He hosts a popular radio show on one of the local radio stations, and also has, significant name recognition because he has just been a force in politics here in the city of New Orleans for so long. So those are our top three. Again, Royce and Oliver kind of keep flip-flopping between, who's number two, who's number three. Presently, the way that mayoral elections work here in the city of New Orleans, for those who may not be familiar, is we have an open primary. So it does not matter what political affiliation you have, everybody runs in the primary. And if one candidate wins 51% of the vote, they're automatically mayor. If no one gets that 51%, the top two candidates then go into what's called a runoff, which is in the general election. So I think a lot of people are kind of familiar with in other places, a primary is political party centered, and that is how the two people who would run for each party is determined, and then they run in a general election. It's a little different here. So we may or may not have a mayor election in our general election. I'm of the mind Helena's really strong. I think a lot of people have, really seen it for her as being the next mayor of New Orleans. But I'm still not 100% convinced that she is going to pull off 51% of the vote, and we will probably see a runoff. What are your thoughts, Charles?
No, I agree. I think this is a numbers game at this point. You and I talk about polls a lot, right? And the ultimate poll that matters is the day. Well, early voting, but plus the day of, right? I feel like, we've been knowing about this for so long, and now it just caught up on us, right? And the election's here. We don't know who's going to win just yet, but what we do know is that we're ready for kind of like a new chapter.
Absolutely.
Orleans, right? We're kind of at an inflection point right now, and there's a desire for change, good change. So that being said, our topic for this is contingent on who wins or whoever wins. I guess regardless who wins, what do we want to see happen in the first 100 days of the administration of the new mayor?
Yeah.
So the way Tasha and I were kind of talking about this is we were playing off of ideas, and currently we're thinking like we each bounce off a topic of each other, and we know the topic, but we don't know what the other person's gonna say, right? And we're gonna kind of see how this goes. So I came up with the topic of it's the first 100 days. What are the top 3 things you want to do? So I'm gonna let you, Tasha, start. I want to hear what you think they should do in the first 100 days.
First 100 days for our new mayor. Yeah, for sure. I think the number one thing I would like to see the new mayor focus on is infrastructure. I think if you talk to anyone in the city of New Orleans, the number one complaint is the streetlights aren't working, the potholes, this is broken. And it is not only an aesthetic issue, it is not only a frustration, it's really a safety issue. I mentioned that we're here downtown, and not too far from where we are is the intersection of St. Charles and Calliope, where for a stretch of, I think, like 7 to 10 days, the streetlight was out. This is an intersection that is not only a major traffic intersection for cars, but you've got pedestrians, you've got the streetcar, you have all of the things happening, and you have a week where the streetlight is completely out. That is a very serious problem. And when questions have been posed about why things like that cannot get fixed quickly, the answer has been that the department that handles that is understaffed. There's currently 3 full-time employees for the entire city, which is crazy. And so what has happened in order to supplement that is that we're working with contractors and outside vendors to come in and do that work. Okay, so if we've got outside contractors and vendors to come and do this work, why is it still taking so long? Oh, because the city's not paying their bills.
It's all dysfunctional.
Contractor's not gonna come out and do the work because they still have an outstanding invoice. So that kind of stuff is very frustrating, and absolutely the sorts of things that in the first 100 days, I would love to see the new mayor have a plan for how you're remediating the outstanding invoices for those contractors that work on important infrastructure so that we can get those things up and running. Julia and Magazine Street, light is out. It has been out for weeks. And
that's so unacceptable.
As we're kind of coming out of the Super Bowl Swift era that we just had here in the city, where there was so much attention around infrastructure and making sure things that were working for the Taylor Swift concert and for the Super Bowl. And everybody's question was, okay, once the Super Bowl is over, how long are these things gonna stay? How long are these improvements gonna last? And we've got the answer. We are in October, and these things are broken again.
Oh wow, the concert was a year ago at this point.
A year ago is when we kind of entered into that.
Right. So we're in hyperdrive right now.
Yeah, so to get that answer of, we can even make it a year with those things fixed is a problem. And we definitely want to see a new mayor who comes in and make sure that we're not seeing those kinds of things.
Love it.
My number 2.
So what's your number 2?
Is a new mayor should have a plan for hurricane preparedness. And what is going to happen? We are in 2025. It is the anniversary, is the 25th anniversary, or excuse me, the 20th anniversary.
Ooh, not that much.
The 20th, we're in 2025, the 20th anniversary of Katrina. And so we know how much of a failure it was on the part of a variety of levels of government with regards to getting people out of the city, making sure that people were aware of emergency plans, where shelters of last resorts were, if the shelters were impacted by the hurricane, how are we getting people out of the city?
Evacuation protocols.
So even now, 2 decades later, it still doesn't feel like we've got great communication pathways and plans in place for how we are ensuring that in the event a storm of that magnitude, or even if it's not a storm of that magnitude, even just a tropical storm or a 2 or 3 category storm, that our elderly, our most vulnerable, are knowing where they can go to be safe, that there's resources available to help those who really, really need it in the instance that we have an emergency that's related to our hurricane. So I would love to see a mayor come in the first 100 days and really show how are we utilizing social media and all the pathways that people get information now, especially with folks cutting the cord and not being as tapped into the traditional radio stations and TV stations. How are we making sure people know where to go within the city for resources when there is an emergency, and how do people know how to get assistance to get out when it's needed?
That's a go.
My last one kind of ties back into
infrastructure, hurricane preparedness.
Infrastructure, hurricane preparedness. Kind of ties back into some of our discussion with infrastructure, and that is homeless population here in New Orleans.
Good one.
So again, around Taylor Swift and the Super Bowl, we saw huge pushes, especially from the state level and from the governor, around moving people who were living in encampments and kind of clearing people out and that sort of thing. And in some ways it was kind of disruptive to some of the things the city actually already had in place with regards to helping those who are experiencing housing instability or unhoused here in the city. And in light of, the Super Bowl has come and gone, what we're actually starting to see, at least from my perspective, is a lot of those activities that the city was doing don't seem to have come back at the same pace that they were prior to the big concert and the big game. Okay. We recently had a dump truck hit one of the overpasses, and we had a major interstate exit that was closed for months. I think close to 3 or 4 months. And part of the reason why that work couldn't get done was, one, the infrastructure team is understaffed and getting the contractors, but also where this damage was just above a major encampment.
Yep.
And so you had to move those people out in order to do this work. And so we're looking at something that is not only a safety issue from a individual standpoint, people living out in the elements, but also a safety issue in that, you're not able to come and do critical infrastructure work because you've now got this encampment here. And so it's really important that the city is refocusing those efforts and resources on ensuring there's stable and safe housing for those individuals that are living on the streets, and that we're getting in there and getting resources to them. So those are my 3: infrastructure, I want to see the homelessness addressed, and hurricane preparedness.
Great. I like that. My number 1 is your number 1. So I want, in the first 100 days, an explicit, given to the public, this is what I want to do for infrastructure.
Yes.
I want an overhaul. I want whatever you want to do. And, what I think is so interesting is you and I have gone to some of the debates and, reading the different forums and different takes, and something that keeps coming up is a reference to how we proved that we could get stuff done before the Super Bowl and Taylor Swift. And, kind of the rhetoric from the candidates is that as mayor, we deserve that level of service every day. Not just for an event. And I think 100%. We need to finally put that into action. So I absolutely want, and again, not just infrastructure, but I wanted this presented to the public, right?
Yeah.
This needs to be explained to us. What do you plan on doing in the first 100 days? And I'm going to hope that regardless of who wins, that I'm assuming they all already have a transition plan in place, right, to start running on day 1. So number 1 is infrastructure for me. Number 2 is I want a complete overhaul of every major department and agency in City Hall.
Yeah.
It is completely dysfunctional, and we know that the number 1 is safety and permits.
Yep.
And from my understanding is that just is a huge obstacle for business, like business 101 in the city, and that's unacceptable. that cannot be a barrier. That needs to be a motivator in terms of getting people to open business in Orleans, and that's just ridiculous. Absolutely. It needs to be overhauled. So my number one and number two are largely related to you. My number three is different in that it's not a citywide effort. It's more of a specific local effort. And what I mean by that is I want whoever wins in their first 100 days to come up with a concrete plan for New Orleans East.
Okay.
As we've known, I do a lot of my research. My dissertation was New Orleans East. And that's a huge part of the city in both land mass and population.
Yep. And
is severely underinvested in. And I really believe that if whoever wins, if they uplift New Orleans East, we uplift Orleans Parish as a whole. So I want some major announcements within the first 100 days of basic like retail investment, grocery stores, restaurants, things that I know that residents out there desperately want and deserve to have out there, right? So I think, and part of that is some candidates have this idea of opening a satellite office, City Hall in New Orleans East, which I think would be great, kind of meeting people where they are. So I really want that third to be a hyper-focused attention that has been largely absent for a very long time on investing specifically in New Orleans East.
And not just for the city, right? I mean, that's a regional anchor. The New Orleans East sits right at the edge of the Twin Spans. Yep. So if you're coming into the city from the east, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, that North direction, Shore, you're talking about if people are coming in for Saints games, if they're coming in for concerts, if they're just, coming through, how are we actually welcoming them into the city? Yeah. And what types of businesses and stores and industries are we looking at potentially putting there to attract people, right? The way that you can utilize the East as a conduit to bring people closer into the city and into the rest of the greater New Orleans region is so important. And I think has been something that has been so overlooked and undervalued. And I agree. Definitely something that I would love to see the new mayor focus on.
Cool.
All right, so recap.
Yeah, so
I've got infrastructure, I've got homelessness, and I've got hurricane preparedness, and you have
infrastructure, city agencies, but specifically safety and permits, and investing in New Orleans East.
So I think that
can we add a little lanyard real quick?
Sure.
I think, and I'm gonna hope you agree with me. I think a lanyard would be a very intentional and communicated to Orleans Parish residents of how this new mayor will interact with the state. In terms of getting the city its fair share. And I say that to say, I'm sure there's a big news this week that the Saints renewed their lease. Which like 10-year plus. But this included a lot of different things, like Benson Tower next door, the training facility in Metro. So it included a bunch of things. But when I was reading on it, and the city's currently in their budget hearings right now, and I'm hearing there's some deficit stuff, but we have not been getting our fair share of big events. Like the state has gotten a disproportionate amount from the Super Bowl, for instance. Mm-hmm. And something that I remember reading was this, we need to kind of overhaul that and have the city get its fair share. So I'm interested to see how the mayor will form a relationship with the governor. What do you think about that?
I think that's a very interesting piece of lanyard.
Just a little something to think about.
Because we definitely have seen with the current administration in Baton Rouge,
which is something
a very different approach to the city of New Orleans and sort of a more heavy-handed approach to New Orleans. And so it will be very interesting to see with a new mayor coming in, how that relationship may or may not change. We've got a whole new city council. Also, when you consider, Royce, who is one of the candidates, is currently in the state legislature. Yep. Helena was previously in the state legislature at one point. So if one of them becomes the new mayor,
I didn't think about that part.
How that could potentially help or hinder their ability to build and form those relationships in Baton Rouge. So I think that is actually a very, very interesting take and something that will be very interesting to see, depending on who takes that office, how that relationship will be cultivated, how it will be formed, and how it will benefit or hinder the city.
Yep.
I mean, we know right now there is an interesting dynamic between the governor and the current mayor. And we know that will be very different with whomever comes into office. So yeah, I like that.
We'll
and
see.
it's definitely something we'll keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
Well, Charles, this has been a fun conversation.
But one more thing, in conclusion, everyone who's watching this podcast, if you live in Orleans Parish, please exercise your right to vote. This election is very important. It is not just the mayor, though, right?
Yeah.
It's a bunch of things. It's the city council. It is tax assessor. It is certain ballot initiatives. Again, this is a very important election, right? And we are huge advocates of this city. And this is the part where we get to play a role in shaping the future of our city, right?
Right, and where you get to have your voice heard. So make sure that you are
Absolutely.
out there on October 11th if you have not already early voted. And we will be following up with you guys once we get some election results.
Absolutely. Till next time.
Till next
Bye,
time.
Pelican Briefers.
Bye, guys. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Pelican Briefs.
If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
If you are loving the show, you can help us keep the conversation going by supporting us on Patreon.
Your contribution on Patreon ensures we can continue producing quality content you love.
Click the link in the description to become a patron today.
Until next time, this is Pelican Briefs.